This is a lava lake. One of very few on the entire planet. It's a permanently molten pool of lava that's continually replenished from deep inside the Earth. Here, scientists have a window into the most powerful force on the planet.
That's one of the things that's very special about this volcano. It has an active lava lake, which is bringing molten rock up to the surface of the Earth, releasing its heat and gas into the atmosphere. Ertarale is the very top part of a deep plumbing system, if you like, that's delivering molten rock up to the surface.
Scientists study the lava lake to learn more about the immense power of Earth's inner heat. And it's at night that Ertarale begins to reveal its secrets. When the motion of the lava lake is speeded up, something intriguing becomes apparent. The movement of the lava follows a very distinctive pattern. It wells up on one side of the crater and forms a dark crust as it cools. Then this crust is moved across the surface of the lake by the churning action of the lava below. Finally, the crust sinks back down.
The lava that we see here and the high temperatures that we see are a reminder of the immense heat inside the Earth. And it's this heat that provides the energy that churns around the Earth's interior.
This process of molten rock churning away below the surface affects the planet on a global scale. But the Earth's heat does far more than simply fuel volcanoes. It continually rebuilds the planet's surface. And it created the conditions for life on Earth to begin. It's quite simple. On this planet, nothing is more powerful. Throughout this region, you find these holes. They're called cenotes. Many have never been explored. But Bernadette and her team are cave explorers who have been pushing ever deeper underground, charting this subterranean underworld. Bernadette is first to descend. It's a stunning place, yet it provides evidence for one of the greatest catastrophes in the Earth's history.
Okay, lower the gear.
To get a sense of the true scale of what happened here means going deeper still, and that means cave diving. Cave diving is notoriously risky.
You see there on the back, that's the gateway to the underground river systems. There's some few crocodiles here and there, and not in this one, of course. It is like 65 meters deep. It goes really deep down there.
Bernadette's a professional cave diver and knows this place like the back of her hand. Descending into the depths of the cenote is like entering a new world. Fewer people have visited some of these drowned caverns than have stepped on the surface of the moon. As divers have explored further, they've discovered the cenotes are actually part of a huge complex of tunnels and caves. In fact, when viewed from above, hundreds of cenotes can be seen scattered across the landscape. This region may hold the key to the future of our climate as global warming takes hold. It's one of the remotest and coldest places on the planet. For much of the year, temperatures fall to -40 degrees Celsius, freezing everything solid, including the ground. But hidden in this frozen ground, known as permafrost, is a potential climate disaster. It's called methane, and it's a far more powerful greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. The danger is, if the permafrost was to melt as a result of global warming, it could release methane on a massive scale. Ecologist Katie Walter believes that it's already beginning to happen. She's studying the lakes that cover the region.
The permafrost contains a very large pool of organic carbon. It's dead plant matter. And that dead plant matter, when it is thawed out in the bottoms of the lakes, it's a food source for organisms that produce methane. They eat the dead plant matter and they burp out methane. Methane is the byproduct of their digestion. And it bubbles up from the lake sediments and gets trapped in the ice.
If Katie's right, then the ice should be full of bubbles of methane. To find out the extent of the problem, Katie and an assistant head out onto the middle of the frozen lake. First, they remove the snow covering the ice, before using tea from their flask to clear the surface.
You can actually see the bubbles trapped in the ice. They're beautiful. The ice can be crystal clear with little bubbles, almost like coins stacked on top of one another. And what's happening is that as the bubbles are released from the sediments beneath, they wobble up through the water column and they hit the ice that's forming and thickening overhead. And so the bubbles actually freeze in place.
The trouble is, if these are bubbles of methane, it won't stay trapped in the ice for long. When the ice thaws in spring, the gas will escape. There's one sure way to check just how much methane is in these bubbles, because it's highly flammable.
When you poke a hole into those pillows of methane, you get this stream of gas that comes out, and depending on the size of your hole, you can get a very large stream of gas. So when you light that, you get a very large flame. And you have to be careful because sometimes you can singe your eyebrows.
These bubbles can be found all over the place. There must be enormous amounts of methane being released here.
That's it. Okay. Go.
And that has serious implications.
The methane then heats the atmosphere, contributing to global warming, which then causes more permafrost to melt and more methane to be produced, and it's sort of this vicious feedback cycle. We think of this permafrost here like as a time bomb waiting to go off.
and it's potentially a very big time bomb. This great frozen expanse covers an area of well over 9.5 million square kilometres. That's bigger than the United States. If all the permafrost were to melt, then it could release enough methane to raise levels in the atmosphere by 10 times. That would be certain to speed up global warming. But by how much and with what consequences, nobody can really say yet. To understand how something as intangible as thin air protects us, you need to find a meteorite that has survived its fall to Earth. Meteorites are rare, so you need to go to great lengths to track one down. Dr. Phil Bland is a planetary scientist on just such a mission, leading an expedition out onto the barren Nullarbor Plain in Western Australia, 3 days' drive from the nearest town. The Nullarbor is vast, about the size of Great Britain, but it's as flat as a pancake, so it's the ideal hunting ground for meteorites. Nothing has changed here for millions of years, allowing meteorites to accumulate undisturbed. The team head off to scour the desert like a police search team.
The Nullabor's a good place to look for meteorites because it's a limestone plateau, so dark meteorites stand out pretty well against the limestone, and there's not much vegetation, so you can see the ground quite clearly. Meteorites are quite dark, and when they've been out here for a while, they rust a little bit. They have chunks of metal in them, so you get a kind of a dark, rusty texture.
After 3 hours of searching in temperatures above 45 degrees, the team haven't had much luck.
I think I got one. Looks pretty good.
That's lovely. Oh, that's a good one.
Looks like it's got some nice fusion crust.
Yeah, that's lovely. The glassy stuff that melts when it comes in.
Must have broken up in the atmosphere before it hit the Earth.
Yeah. You can tell this is a meteorite because it's quite heavy, it's quite dark, it's got little rusty patches, and it's got this smooth surface from when it came through the atmosphere.
This little chunk of rock would once have been something much more substantial.
Before it hit the top of the atmosphere, something like this might have been part of an object the size of a washing machine or a small car, but a car made of solid rock. And that's punched into the atmosphere, the surface has melted and been stripped off, and then remelted and stripped off, and gradually whittled down to small little chunks like this. An object like this will hit the top of the atmosphere at about just under 20 kilometres a second. Now the bulk of our atmosphere, almost all of it, is within 60 miles of the surface. So if that didn't slow down, it would transit the whole atmosphere in 3 seconds. But it does slow down. The atmosphere acts like a brake on it and strips material off, and gradually it'll slow down to the speed as if you just dropped it off a tall building.
Without Earth's atmosphere constantly protecting the planet from such projectiles, life on Earth would suffer a regular bombardment from objects in space.
What that tells us about the atmosphere is that it's an effective protection for us and other life on Earth.
Connie Steffen is a scientist who has worked in the Arctic for over 3 decades. He and his team are high up on the Greenland ice sheet. They're trying to discover what's causing it to speed up and to find out if this acceleration is related to climate change.
From 95 onwards, the climate got warmer. The ice started to move faster. And that increased from a few percent to 10%. Now it's over 80% faster in extreme summers. And it produced more water like this river. And this water is probably the explanation why the ice here it starts to move faster.
Each summer on the ice sheet, increased meltwater is forming more and more lakes and rivers. And this is where the water flows into deep shafts called moulins. No one knows for sure where the water ends up, but Connie believes it flows straight to the base of the ice, lubricating it and making it flow faster. If he's right, then there would be a direct connection between climate change and the retreating glaciers. But so far, no one's been able to prove if the meltwater reaches the bedrock or if it simply flows through the ice and never reaches the bottom. Now, Connie and his team are going to drop a camera into a moulin to trace the route the water takes. It's the first time anyone's attempted this. They're using a special waterproof camera built by NASA, designed to withstand freezing temperatures. They've chosen the biggest moulin they could find. There's no water running into it at surface level, but they know there's plenty down there because they can hear it. It's a precarious business as they don't know how thick the overhang of ice is.
This is pretty safe, right?
I think so.
Okay. If we go down, we hang on the rope.
All right.
And our colleagues take us out again.
They've got 1,000 meters of cable, which Connie believes is enough to lower the camera all the way to the bedrock.
Meters. This is amazing. 70 meters. 70 meters.
There we go. Now we're submerged. Wow. Now it's a lot, yeah.
Finally, 90 meters down, and they've reached meltwater. It's a good sign that the camera's on the right track.
50 degrees.
But if this moulin does reach the very bottom, there's still a long way to go.
I think it's stuck. It's stuck on a wall. It's hit a ledge.
The camera seems to have reached a bend in the moulin, and it's not moving. It could just be a kink in the moulin, or it could be the water never reaches the bedrock. To find out, Connie and his team will have to return next summer with a new type of camera. The legacy of this vanished ocean is found half a kilometre underneath the island of Sicily. This is salt. When the water evaporated from the Mediterranean, this is what it left behind. Millions and millions of tons of it. They've been mining it for 50 years. But astonishingly, there's so much salt here, they could keep mining for 1 million years without running out. There's so much, they've even built their own chapel out of salt. 200 metres underground. But plain old table salt wasn't the only thing left behind by the drying Mediterranean. This is a geode. These rock crystals are made from a mineral called gypsum, and they're over a metre long. They formed when seawater met hot volcanic waters bubbling up from below. This formed a mineral-rich mixing zone where these crystals grew. When the sea level fell, the crystals were left behind by the vanishing waters. It's astonishing enough to think that the Mediterranean evaporated once, but in fact, this sea has come and gone many times over the last few million years. Mars is a frozen wasteland with an average temperature of -60 degrees. That's because its atmosphere doesn't have enough carbon dioxide to keep it warm. On the other hand, the temperature on the surface of Venus is hot enough to melt lead. Not simply because it's closer to the Sun, but because Venus has an atmosphere with 400 times more carbon dioxide than Earth. The early Earth was much more volcanic than it is today because its core was so much hotter. And this provided enough carbon dioxide to compensate for the weak sun. It was volcanoes that prevented the young Earth from freezing over. And so early life was able to survive. But even this was not the end of what volcanoes have done for life on Earth. About 600 million years ago, they also helped trigger the greatest evolutionary leap in Earth's history. And a great evolutionary leap was certainly needed, because soon after life got started, it got stuck in a bit of a rut. Shark Bay in Western Australia is home to some of the oldest life forms on Earth. These strange domes are made up from layer upon layer of bacteria. They're called stromatolites. For most of Earth's long history, this was the most advanced life on Earth. For 2 billion years, stromatolites ruled our planet unchallenged. And there was nothing to suggest that this was ever going to change. But life was to face a crisis that would finally end the long reign of the stromatolites and lead to the beginning of a new era in the story of life on Earth. The era of complex life. It's only in the last few years that scientists have realised just what a catastrophe the planet endured around 700 million years ago, and how it's linked to the evolution of life. Here in Namibia, southwest Africa, Paul Hoffman discovered evidence for this disaster in rocks that used to be on the sea floor.
Here we have a bunch of very, very thin layers of fine sediment. Typical deposits of quiet water, maybe very slowly moving bottom currents. Nothing unusual. But then you have these outsized stones. There's one here, 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 and then look at this big fella here. Huh? So these are perfectly normal sediments, but this is unusual. There's no way this could have been transported in quiet water. There had to be another process that brought this stone and plopped it down into the sediment.
These boulders are known as drop stones, and how they made their way to an ocean near the equator is really quite remarkable.
The boulders were brought here by ice. They were picked up on land at the base of a glacier. The glacier flowed off the land and out onto the sea. And those stones that were in the iceberg drop out of the iceberg as it melts, plop down into the sediment. And that's why we call these stones drop stones.
Ice sheets at the equator could mean only one thing.
Now, the fact that there are drop stones here means that there were glaciers flowing into the ocean in one of the warmest parts of the world. That means there must have been ice everywhere, and we call that a snowball Earth.
Scientist Lee Kump thinks these waters hold the key to what caused the Permian mass extinction.
We think of Green Lake as almost a living fossil of the Permian Ocean. The upper part of this lake is just like any other beautiful lake in northeastern United States. That's fish, plants, but lurking down below is another environment entirely. This is an oxygen-free environment that's been created because this lake is essentially stagnant. When you dive down into this lake, you find at about 60 feet, everything changes, and lurking down there is this toxic brew that we think was involved in the mass extinction at the end of the Permian period.
Diving into this toxic brew isn't without risk.
Well, this isn't your standard pleasure dive here. The dive is potentially hazardous, actually. So we have to be particularly cautious when we dive here to avoid long exposure to the poisons that exist within this lake.
So we've just arrived at 60 feet. This is the depth where the water goes from having oxygen in it to having no oxygen.
Where the oxygen levels fade, you encounter a lifeless world where almost nothing survives. You're approaching the danger zone when the water turns pink. This means you're swimming in one of the most toxic poisons on Earth. It's called hydrogen sulfide, and it builds up when water stagnates.
You see the water is pink. That pink is millions and millions of purple bacteria. These bacteria consume hydrogen sulfide. So if I were in any doubt that hydrogen sulfide was here in this environment, this confirms it. These pink bacteria are the smoking gun for the cause of the Permian mass extinction.
This is not a safe place to linger.
Hydrogen sulfide right now, even though I have a full wetsuit on, is absorbing through my skin. So we're just gonna get the heck out of here.
In this lake, the hydrogen sulfide is trapped below the surface. But it seems that 250 million years ago, it was a very different story. The hydrogen sulfide escaped from the stagnant oceans and bubbled up into the air.
These sulfide-rich waters rose to the surface and degassed into the atmosphere, so the devastation was able to spread from the oceans onto the land.
The Svartisen Glacier in Norway is one of the few places on Earth where ice can really be seen in action. It's thanks to this glacier that scientists are starting to understand the secrets of ice's great power. Svartisen has something unique, something that shows how it works not just from the outside, but from the inside. Deep beneath the glacier, in a chamber at the end, scientists come face to face with ice. Then it's 2 days of hard work using hot water to melt a cave big enough to get inside the glacier and see it in all its glory. Miriam Jackson is a glaciologist who spends up to 3 weeks at a time down here.
So we're now at the very bottom of the glacier. We're under 200 meters of ice, and it's closing in on us all the time. While we work in here, we have to work quickly, so we get our work done before the glacier closes in completely.
Here, at the very bottom of the glacier, it's possible to see how ice is able to slice right through solid rock.
Here we have the basal ice. It's very pure, it's very clean, and then suddenly, about a meter or so above the bed, it becomes very dirty. This is the bottom of the glacier. As the glacier moves along, it picks up a lot of sediment, and you can see that there's bits of gravel in. There's rocks as well that have been carried along by the glacier. They're also just rubbing along at the bottom of the glacier. It's like sandpaper just wearing away and wearing away at the rock underneath.
So it's not the ice itself that does all the damage. It's the debris that it picks up along the way.
We find quite big rocks, a meter across, and also on other glaciers, they found them up to the size of a house. So the glacier is very powerful. It can carry absolutely huge pieces of rock along with it and transport them down the valley.
The ice cave has another surprise. One that may help explain why something as apparently solid as ice can also bend and flow.
One of the interesting things we found in the ice is water pockets. And you don't usually see this in the glacier, it's just the ice at the bottom of the glacier. And the water pockets, there's not really much known about them, they haven't really been studied well in other places. And you actually see an example of one just up here. And we opened this up a bit when we were melting, but there was water in here. And it's quite strange that this is a glacier and it's all frozen, and yet there's these little pockets of water at the very bottom of the glacier that somehow have managed to stay as a liquid. Just the presence of these holes in the ice with water in does make the ice softer and it makes it flow more easily.
These water pockets apparently make the ice less brittle, so it can bend around obstacles in the landscape.
We were very surprised to see this. It was something that we didn't know about before. People have studied glaciers for years, and then suddenly you find this feature that wasn't really known about.
These water pockets help explain how ice can flow so easily. It's far from the rigid, solid mass that at first appears. As if to prove the point, the ice invades the space Miriam leaves behind. In just 3 days, the magical ice cave disappears. You get some idea of how dependent we are on oxygen when you see how it affects something as basic as human reproduction. This is the village of Aruya, perched high in the Andes. It's one of a string of villages in this area that are some of the highest in the world. Many are over 3,000 meters. Andean peoples have lived here for generations. But when the first Spanish colonists arrived, they faced a problem. They couldn't have children. Baby after baby miscarried. It took 53 years before any of the immigrant Spanish women gave birth. The problem? A lack of oxygen. The newly arrived Spanish, like most people, were used to breathing air at sea level, which is 21% oxygen. But up here, the oxygen levels are effectively almost halved. The Andeans had adapted to deal with this, but the Spanish struggled. Nobody knows quite how the Spanish overcame this problem, but it's probably no more complicated than having children with the locals. But these high-altitude villages are approaching the limits of human adaptation. Much over 5,000 metres and human reproduction becomes impossible. Oxygen sets a limit for the very existence of our species. So life created oxygen, and in turn oxygen has extended the possibilities of life.